In a landmark decision, the U.S. Supreme Court has struck down former President Trump's sweeping tariff policies, dismantling a protectionist strategy that defined American trade in 2025. The ruling is more than a legal technicality, it's a fundamental shift in presidential power and global commerce. The foundation of America's trade relationships is now in question, sending shockwaves through the global economy. Businesses are scrambling, and world leaders are watching closely. The Trump administration's tariffs, designed to protect American jobs and national security, marked a sharp break from decades of free trade policy. These broad tariffs affected nearly every U.S. trading partner, creating instability and sudden cost increases for companies reliant on global supply chains. The administration argued this pain was necessary for long-term strength, but mounting challenges brought the issue to the Supreme Court. Now, with the tariffs declared unconstitutional, the authority of the president to unilaterally impose such taxes is in doubt. Some businesses celebrate, others face new uncertainty, and the global economic system must rapidly adjust. The aftershocks of this decision are just beginning to reshape the world's trading order. The administration's tariff strategy had two controversial parts: trafficking tariffs and worldwide tariffs. Trafficking tariffs targeted Canada, Mexico, and China, justified as a response to the fentanyl crisis, aiming to pressure these nations into stronger anti-drug efforts. This was an unprecedented use of trade policy for law enforcement. The broader worldwide tariffs imposed a baseline 10% tax on nearly all imports, with some countries facing rates up to 50%. The rationale: if other countries taxed U.S. goods, America would reciprocate, escalating global trade tensions. These policies redefined executive power, linking trade to public health and national security in ways critics called extreme. Businesses with global supply chains were hit hard, forced to absorb costs or pass them to consumers. The administration's message: bring manufacturing home or pay the price. But relocating operations is complex and slow, leaving many companies trapped. The sweeping tariffs upended decades of economic planning, sparking legal and economic chaos. The result: a radical disruptive experiment in American trade policy. The fallout set the stage for a historic legal battle. The tariffs sparked immediate legal resistance from businesses large and small, who argued the president was creating new taxes without Congress's consent. Lawsuits quickly moved through the courts, culminating in two key cases. One from educational toy companies, another from a coalition of importers. The toy companies argued the tariffs threatened their survival, forcing unaffordable price hikes. A district court agreed, ruling that regulating trade is not the same as taxing it. Meanwhile, the Court of International Trade invalidated both trafficking and worldwide tariffs, a decision upheld by the appellate court. The government appealed to the Supreme Court, insisting the tariffs were legal and vital for national security. With conflicting rulings and billions at stake, the business community was left in limbo. The Supreme Court faced a high-stakes question: does the president have the power to impose sweeping tariffs without Congress? The answer would determine not just the fate of the tariffs, but the balance of power in American government. The legal showdown became a test of constitutional limits on executive authority. Businesses waited anxiously, uncertain if they'd be refunded or forced to adapt permanently. The government warned that losing this tool would weaken U.S. leverage abroad. The stakes: the future of American trade, the economy, and the separation of powers. All eyes turned to the 9 justices for a final, decisive answer. The outcome would reverberate far beyond the courtroom. The legal fight centered on the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977, or IEPA. The Trump administration claimed IEPA let the president regulate imports, including imposing tariffs, during a national emergency. They cited past precedent and argued tariffs were a vital foreign policy tool. Challengers countered that only Congress can levy taxes, and IEPA never mentioned tariffs. They invoked the major questions doctrine: Congress must clearly authorize any vast expansion of executive power. Critics argued the cited emergencies, trade deficits, and fentanyl didn't meet IEPA's intent. They warned that allowing such broad interpretation would give the president unchecked power to tax. The case became a battle over the Constitution's separation of powers. The Supreme Court had to decide: Who really controls America's economic destiny? The Supreme Court sided with the challengers, delivering a decisive check on presidential power. The majority ruled that IEEPA does not grant the president authority to impose taxes. Only Congress can do that. The court distinguished between regulating trade and taxing it, emphasizing that taxation is a core legislative function. They invoked the major questions doctrine, stating that Congress must speak clearly if it intends to delegate such significant power. The justices rejected the idea that vague statutory language could justify a multi-billion-dollar tariff regime. The ruling invalidated both trafficking and worldwide tariffs, reaffirming that the power of the purse belongs to Congress. The decision set a clear constitutional boundary for future presidents. The message emergency powers have limits, and executive authority cannot override the legislature. The Supreme Court's decision sent shockwaves through global markets. Initial optimism gave way to confusion as businesses scrambled to adapt to the sudden removal of tariffs. The US dollar fell sharply, creating new challenges for international contracts and trade. Commodity prices, once inflated by tariffs, plummeted, hurting domestic producers who had ramped up output. American farmers remained locked out of key markets as retaliatory tariffs abroad lingered. Global supply chains, painstakingly restructured to avoid tariffs, were thrown into disarray. Companies faced tough choices: reverse costly moves or stick with new suppliers. Boardrooms worldwide were paralyzed by uncertainty, chilling new investment. The abrupt policy shift exposed the fragility of the interconnected global economy. The end of tariffs didn't mean a return to normal. It meant a new era of unpredictability. Businesses and investors struggled to find their footing in a rapidly changing landscape. The world's trading system was forced to adapt. Again, the fallout was immediate, complex, and far from over. Beyond Wall Street, the tariff saga hit American families and small businesses hardest. Tariffs acted as a hidden tax, raising prices on everything from groceries to electronics. The average household paid up to $2,800 more in 2025 alone. Small businesses, like bike shops and educational toy makers, faced impossible choices: absorb costs or raise prices. Many took on debt just to survive. The Supreme Court's decision offered relief, but recovery is slow. Retailers are hesitant to lower prices on inventory, bought at higher costs. Lingering uncertainty means businesses may not pass savings to consumers right away. Families remain hopeful, but wary after a year of economic whiplash. The true impact of the decision will take time to reach Main Street. The Supreme Court's ruling ends one chapter but opens another filled with tough questions. Billions collected from now illegal tariffs may need to be refunded, sparking new legal battles. America's trade policy future is uncertain. Will it return to free trade, or has protectionism changed the game for good? The decision may push Congress to reclaim authority over trade, possibly through new legislation. Globally, trust in U.S. trade stability has been shaken, and nations may turn to regional blocs. The ruling redefines the balance of power in Washington, limiting presidential emergency powers. The U.S. stands at a crossroads. How it responds will shape its role in the world for years to come. The story of American trade is far from over. A new, uncertain era has just begun.